Every week we do a Q&A with interesting and accomplished members of the adaptive community to find how they persevered, how they innovated, how they built communities, and how they found solutions. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. Today we have a good friend of mine, a recent friend of mine, Dianne Vitkus, who is a former, as she said, former 6-foot collegiate lacrosse player at Brown University, a surgical physician's assistant in Syracuse, New York, now living a life a little shorter in Boston, Mass, focusing on rehab while trying to find her next calling. Dianne, welcome.
Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
Oh, this is awesome. It was great to see you at the Challenge Athletes Foundation event this past weekend. This is an interesting thing, right? Because for us, we've brought on a lot of people, we say, interesting and accomplished members of the adaptive community. Yeah. And resilience is a huge part of what we do. The accomplished for you is in some ways in the future, because it's 15 months since your accident. You're still trying to figure out what happened. I saw you this last weekend in San Diego, which was your very first trip on an airplane. So what is, you're recently out of the hospital, recently out of rehab, out of Spalding. What is life like for you right now? Like you're saying, trying to find your next calling. You're waiting for your next calling. What's going on?
Honestly, every single month is different for me. And every single month I'm seeing like new things I'm doing, new people I meet, and I'm just trying to get myself out there as much as I can to make these connections and create new opportunities for myself. So I'm really focusing on rehab and just trying to get stronger every day. I guess neuro recovery has kind of plateaued, but I don't believe that that's really gonna prevent me from still like growing and like getting stronger and seeing progress and like what I can do every day. So I'm kind of, when I say like waiting for my next calling, it's just, it's really unknown, because I just feel like every single month I'm meeting new people, and I don't know like where that can take me, and I'm open to any possibility. I want to get back into healthcare. I miss it so much, but I also want to get stronger and want to walk. So I'm, trying to balance those two things. And so being at the Challenge Athletes Foundation, that was so uplifting. And I was walking by the first night on Friday night, or rolling by with my friend who was there with me, and saw you out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Chris, it was awesome. But like being there and having like seeing all these amputees and people in wheelchairs and kids in wheelchairs was just like nothing I've experienced. I mean, I've only been in a wheelchair for 15 months, and it was just like the norm to have a disability, like if you didn't have a disability, or like kind of you were the outcast, so it was like a flip of society. And it was so empowering to see. I think the most empowering thing was seeing the kids interact with each other, and just like the huge smiles on their face when they were like interacting with other wheelchair users, because I've really have had it's been a big shock to be in this society in a wheelchair.
How does that work? So it's kind of interesting, right? Because a lot of the people, I mean, for me, I'm coming up on 33 years in a wheelchair in December 20th will be 33 years for me. Oh. This is 15 months for you. So it's so much fresher. Yeah. In your mind, like that moment of my life has changed profoundly. I mean, in some ways you're saying you want to get back into healthcare, but in a lot of ways you've been in healthcare. It just happens to be a really personal form of healthcare, and you probably know better questions to be able to ask. But what was the story that you told yourself as you were going through, as your life, as you went from being 6 feet tall? I say this, I was 6 feet tall as well. So going from 6 feet to like 4'10",
Yeah.
right? It's like life, your perspective has entirely changed, or your perspective about your future has changed as well. How were you able to kind of persist?
So when I first fell, I fell off a fire escape ladder, 12 feet. I slipped going down and fell right on my back. And when I first fell, I just laid there and was in pain. My shoulder hurt. I broke my scapula. So immediately I was like, oh gosh, that's gonna hurt. That's the only thing that really hurt because I couldn't feel anything from my chest down. Then when I realized that I was paralyzed, which only took seconds, I didn't hit my head or anything. So like I was fully alert, aware, and everything. I realized, wow, I'm paralyzed. I just ruined my life. My life is over. Like those were my immediate thoughts. Like, and then it's like my life is never gonna be the same. The next like couple months or wow, like I was just kind of like speechless, but laying there, I was by myself. But I was pretty calm. I think,
You ever worked with anyone, like, so you were a surgical physician's assistant? Had you ever worked with anyone who was a
no, I
quadriplegic? No.
really didn't have a lot of experience with it. No.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I because I was mostly like in surgery. I did a neurosurgery rotation in school, so I did like a lot of back surgeries and scrubbed into neck surgeries and so even like the surgery that I got that night, I had scrubbed in and seen before. Um, so I like knew all like what was going to happen, like what the next steps were going to be. So even going to the ER, like or going in the ambulance, they were like, all right, you punctured a lung, like you're gonna need a chest tube. Got into the ER, I knew I needed a chest tube. As they were doing it, I knew like I could picture what was happening. I was still terrified and freaked out and scared, but like I knew like I'd been on the other side, so I was fairly calm, all things considered. But also like on the other side of it, well, fast forward a couple months and just like taking it all in, I think weirdly enough, so I had gotten diagnosed with type 1 diabetes my senior year of high school. And that was like really hard for me, big transition. Senior year of high school, like that's you're pretty young, lots of changes, you're about to go to college, then you get type 1 diabetes and you have to manage all that. And I was very self-conscious about like, you know, wearing a pump. Like I didn't want the tube showing and like I didn't want to bring out needles or test my sugar in front of anyone. Like I wanted to hide it any way possible. I've been living with it for 10 years now. So I've just gotten like very comfortable with it and like, hey, I have this, not whatever. Like, here, you can see it. Doesn't matter. I'm still gonna like be better at you in this, and this. So who cares, you know? So I kind of like weirdly enough, I think type 1 diabetes kind of prepared me well for getting paralyzed. Like, because then I'm like, all right, I'm paralyzed. So this sucks. But you know what? I'm gonna work my tail off and I'm still gonna show you that I can do this, and this.
And this
So
one you can't really hide. I mean, you could try to hide
yeah,
the pump, the type 1 diabetes pump or whatever, the insulin pump. But this one, it's like, it's pretty obvious that
when you're in a wheelchair, you're in a
wheelchair.
wheelchair. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not just hanging out there just because it's more comfortable.
Right, right. I wish.
Exactly. So how do you go from that? Because in some ways it's almost harder, right? That what the physiology of all that's happening, right? And so,
Yeah.
so you kind of know that part, you know, okay, that quadriplegic, that C6. I mean, this is like, you did get good news as far as being C6, right? Which wasn't necessarily great news for you, but what was the good news that they told you?
So the good news, yeah, like when I first woke up and they're doing the sensory testing and the motor testing and the strength testing. Um, they were testing my arms and I had good arm strength, good bicep. They're like, "Oh, you're strong." I'm like, "All right, like I am stuck in bed and can't move a thing, but sure, thanks." And then they test my triceps and I had triceps, which for a C6 is, a miracle because triceps is innervated by C7. So right away they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're so lucky you got triceps. This is wow. You're C6 and you have triceps." I'm like, "I don't know what that means." Like, yeah, whatever. Like, still paralyzed. Like,
You weren't feeling so lucky at the moment.
but not feeling lucky at all. But now having triceps, I'm able to push my chair. I'm able to be in a manual chair and not a power chair. So that definitely I've come to find really is like a miracle that I have that. And like, even it's hard to say, but I've always been like an optimistic person. So C6, and I have to remind myself of this often, but C6, all right, that's a cervical neck injury. You don't have any core function. Um, and so it's very hard to balance, very hard to do things. You don't have any hand function. Like, often I'm like, why can't I just be like T1? Like, come on, or like, why can't I be like C8? Like, come on. But on the other side, at least I'm not C4, like at least I have my arms and my wrists and I'm in a manual chair, not a power chair. So I do have to remind myself of that often. And the gym that I go to is definitely a place where you see that. Like, you see the people that have a lower injury and are better off functioning and are able to stand up and one foot in front of the other, even though it's very challenging for them. But then you see the people that are in a power chair and in a sip and puff and can hardly move their neck and are trached. So that's like, it's a place where you're very humbled and grounded, because I feel like I'm like kind of right in the middle of like catastrophe or like kind of a little easier. So
It's all relative. Yes, you're totally true. So, and you have to define sip and puff as well, because people out there might not necessarily know what a sip and puff is.
yeah, so it's a power chair where you have like a mouthpiece device that you can control your wheelchair, and you can move your neck and head, and like I think some it's just that, others you can like breathe a little bit or suck a little bit, and that also moves it.
Helps direct your chair. So it's like a joystick that you basically use by your mouth.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So when did this sense of optimism come about? I mean, did it come early? Did it come, I mean, when did you sort of say, okay, well, this is the situation, could be better, could be worse, but I'm going to go forward? When did that happen?
Um, Honestly, I think it's just been ingrained in me since I was little. That when like immediately when I fell, I was like, shoot, like um, you know, my first thought was my life was over, but I would, that was an exaggeration, and I knew like I could still like get through it and work hard and you know um persevere. And I guess there wasn't like a moment in my injury that I felt that way. Um, I definitely had a lot of ups and downs, and felt like, the whole 5 stages of grief. Um, so I wasn't optimistic through it all. But I think like the ingrained optimism in me, just kind of always kept me level headed. And I've always been like, even if I had a bad day in rehab and I cried all day, be like, all right, just sleep. Tomorrow's a new day. The sun is going to shine. And that was the nice part about being in Spalding, is like had a great view of the water. The sun would shine right in my eyes, and it was always annoying because I like couldn't see, because you wake up and my blood pressure was a major issue at Spalding, which is a major issue for, I think everyone that's initially paralyzed, is orthostatic hypotension. So your blood pressure tends to drop even when you just like sit up in bed. My blood pressure tends to still drop when I stand, but when I was in rehab, I would sit up in bed and I would pass out. Like, and that happened a couple of times. The nurses would be in the room with me, and I would be eating my breakfast. Or I would sit up to eat my breakfast. I would take one bite and I would just pass out. And they'd be like, Dianne, 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 code red or whatever. People would run in. And then I would wake up to like 10 people in my room, and I'd be like, I'm fine. What's everyone here for? No, you just want to say hi to me? Hi. Hi, you guys can leave now, like, so, like, even if you had a bad day, I would just start over the next day. And I think that really, really helped me. And yeah.
Did that strength come from within? Is it part of family, part of like your upbringing? Is it part of your community? Is it part of faith? Or, I mean, where does that strength come from? I think it's a question for a lot of people, right?
Yeah. For me, it comes from my family and my friends and community. I like, even when I was in the hospital in Syracuse, even like the first couple of days, I got like tons of flowers, and I'm like, how do people know I'm here? Like, how, like, where are these flowers coming from? And I would get flowers from like these random people that, not random, but like, people I hadn't talked to in a while. And it was really, really special. And then my room would always be decorated with flowers and cards. And even like the one card I still have it actually right up there. It says, "You are brave, you are strong, you are loved." And I would wake up to that every day, and I would look at that. Or if I was like having a bad moment, or I was struggling to breathe, which all of my like ICU stay, I was struggling to breathe, like I was on and off ventilators, and in and out of being intubated, and just like felt like I was drowning in my own saliva. And I would look at that, and I would read, "You are brave, you are strong, you are loved. You're brave, you're strong, you're loved." And I would just like, that like literally got me through. And then I would look at all these other cards too. But that one just, it was like a bold card. And those three like mantras essentially just like got me through it. And it like all of that just like helped me get strength, or have strength. And then same ordeal in rehab. Like so I came to Boston for rehab. It was a decision that me and my family made together, to come to Boston, and to go to Spalding Rehabilitation Center, right here in Charlestown. And I really wanted to come here because I knew I had a community here. Since I went to school in Providence, a lot of my college friends were here. My very best friend from college was here. And then a lot of my high school friends are here. So when I moved here or came to rehab here, my family was still in Syracuse, but I had all these friends in Boston, and I had a schedule every single day of people that would come to visit me in rehab. And it was tough because it was during COVID. So visitors were restricted for the majority of the time. And I could have 2 visitors a day, 1 hour each visitor, and they weren't allowed at the same time. But every day I had a schedule of who it was going to be. And like out for like 2 weeks, someone would text me and be like, hey, can I come see you? I'm like, well, I'm booked up for 3 weeks. But that like truly kept me going. And even like at the end of the day, I would be exhausted from therapy all day because I had like 3-4 hours of therapy today. And I'd be exhausted, and my parents would be like, do you really want your friends to come visit you today? Like, you should rest. And like, no, like I need them here. Like they're getting me through. They are 100%, like I am exhausted, but if I don't have them here, like I'm just gonna like get depressed and sit here and like, I don't know, like drowned in my own sorrows. Like I need them here to distract me, to put a smile on my face, talk to me. Like I really need them. And they really gave me that. And they decorated my whole room within like a couple of days. And then like nurses would come in and be like, you've been here for like 2 days. And like, it looks like you've been here for a month. Like, cause I had pictures everywhere and like cards everywhere. And like, even like, I don't even know, like decor, like my best friend like brought in these decor photos, and you're like, is this an apartment? Like, what are you doing? So it was like a very homey hospital room, and all because of the community that helped me and supported me.
Well, that's the demonstration of you being loved, right? This is you're
Yeah.
brave, you're powerful, you're loved, and that's sustenance in so many ways. It's the thing that's bringing you along. But what about the other side? I mean, I often believe that you are going to get better based on what you love, like a passion that you have, a reason, a purpose, the thing that makes you do that much more. Did you have that kind of a purpose, that kind of a personal love?
Um, like, what do you mean? I mean, definitely activity gave me that purpose.
So like for me, it was really like I was convinced I was going to ski again. And it was like, okay, first it was I'm going to go back to college. And I went back to college 2 months after the accident. And then it was like, I'm going to ski again. I'm going to, and it's partially like you're talking about, I'm going to walk, and that in some ways is the only way, especially initially, that you can imagine that you are recovered, is that you walk. I mean, you break your arm, they put it in a cast, they take the cast off, your arm's okay.
Yeah.
This is a little bit different situation, right? And so was it that kind of thing, that kind of like passion of like, I'm going to show you wrong. You think that what I can do, and I'm going to prove to you that I can do more? Or what was the thing that got you up in the morning and got you to work?
I think I'm still trying to figure that out because I set very small goals for myself. And I tackle each small goal. And I still have those small goals. Like my next small goal is to drive. And then after that is to get back to work. But like I can't get back to work until, like, for me, I have like small goals in my head. So like in rehab, it was like, all right, I'm going to sit myself up in bed today. And my sister, Karen, actually, even when I was in the hospital in Syracuse, she made a list every single day of something I had accomplished, something that I couldn't do the day before. And she called them my milestones. And every day she would call me at the end of the day, every single day she would call me at the end of the day. Or if I couldn't answer, because I really couldn't, she would call the nurse's station and get an update. But she'd be like, all right, what did you do today? I'm like, well, today I picked my nose.
Which is a huge achievement.
She's like, okay. I mean, I don't have fingers. How am I gonna pick my nose? Like, I did nothing. She's like, no, what did you do? So I, kind of like it was a daily thing. Then as I started to get better, that became like every few days. But then in rehab, it was like, all right, I'm gonna sit myself up. Or I'm gonna transfer myself. If I can transfer myself, I can live independently. The big thing in rehab was like, I'm gonna be independent. I don't want to be in a power chair. I don't want to be like have 24-hour aids. Like, no, I'm not like I'm independent. Like I can live by
Independence is the
myself.
driving force. Can you
Independent.
describe what it means to sit up? Like how, I mean, I remember trying to sit up the very first time that I tried to sit up, like lying on the PT mat. And I felt like I was Velcroed to the mat. Like
Truly.
I
Yeah.
couldn't budge.
Yeah. Um, you really without any core, I have maybe like my first two, maybe. I'm still working on them.
This is the optimism. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're literally just, yeah, that's a great way to put it, is Velcroed. Your back is Velcroed to the mat. So when I was in rehab, I was able to kind of roll myself to one side, barely, grab the side rail of the hospital bed with one arm. And then I was able to, like, I think, grab it with the other arm, kind of prop myself up halfway or maybe quarter of the way. And then I could put my arms behind me and then like sit up with my legs straight and my body like at a perpendicular angle to my legs. And that was huge. I have a video of that on my Instagram page, and I was just so happy that I could do that, because that like that's everything. Otherwise, you're literally just laying in bed, stuck there. You can't do anything. So if I could sit up, that means, okay, that means I can get myself out of bed one day. Like that means if I can do this now, because I couldn't do that like a month ago, that means I can get myself out of bed one day by myself. So that means I can live by myself. That means I can take care of myself. That means I can feed myself. That means I can go to work again and be a normal human in society. And I say normal, but like a functioning person in society.
Right. You just get around a little bit differently. What was the wrestling match like? I mean, that must have been exhausting the
Oh,
first
yeah.
time. I mean, just sort of wedging your arm over
I
the
tried
rail and
over and over and over again. And like, and then what I remember getting it, and I was so happy. And then the next day I like couldn't do it again. And I'm like, wait, what? I did this yesterday. Why can't I do it? Because I had to like be at the right angle and next to the handrail, like had to be I guess I had to be at the right angle and like at the right length of the bed, like next to the handrail. And if it was like any sort of off, then I couldn't do it. So that was, I was like, wait, what? I just did this. And still I struggle with it, but I actually just got last week. I'm now able to do it like without any hand wraps, and I can just do it. I can sit myself up so I can, and it's really all back muscles and scap muscles. I just squeeze my shoulders together, and then I'm able to get like one arm kind of straight up behind me, or like prop it on my elbow first, and then kind of move it back underneath me, and then I can sway to the other side, get the other arm up, and then I'm able to like straighten my elbows and sit myself up. And that's actually something very new that I've just accomplished. So that was really big for me. And my physical therapist, I was just doing it the other day, and now I'm able to completely roll over without any like bed rails, because previously I could roll over onto my stomach if I grabbed the bed rail with my opposite hand and like kind of pulled my whole body around. But now I can just like do it with momentum and get my arms right, and I can just roll over on my own. And I can just, so I can do those two things, and I can get my legs up in bed. So she's like, I think I can discharge you. I'm like, wait, okay, I got accomplished those things, but like I still can't walk. So what? You're discharging me? Like, no. Back up. Can I undo what I just did so you don't discharge me? Like, I'm not ready to be discharged. I still got a lot more to accomplish.
What's
But
it like? Oh, go ahead.
I can kind of like, I'm able to do those things on my own now, and I can like do I know what exercises to do now at home, and it is a big deal to be discharged, because that means now I don't have to spend as much time in therapy. I can spend that time at work or at a job, and then I can do my therapy at home at my own time, and because I know what to do and how to do it. But it was kind of hard to swallow that.
What's it like to look back on? I mean, your sister noted your achievements for each day, and I'm assuming she kept all of these, and
Yeah.
that you have them. Have you gone back and looked at those?
I haven't. Let me see if I have them, because that would be very funny to read. I'll just type in.
Because she just texted them to you.
Yeah, here they are. So July 19th, she calls me a klutz, and that was the day of my accident. And then July 21st, she said, move, lift, left hand to nose. So like this was my accomplishment. I could just like move my arm and bring it to my nose, because I couldn't do that. Let's see. Then the next day I brushed teeth with help of tape. I actually forget like what that's all about. Maybe they taped it to my hand or something.
Tape the toothbrush, probably. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And I drank some water. Let's fast forward like a week. She goes, "You're eating!" Exclamation point. Through an NG tube though. So I'm not really eating. I had to have a feeding tube, but
The one that went up your nose and down into your stomach. That's
my stomach. Yeah, I had that for like 3 weeks. And I remember being really embarrassed that I had that actually.
I hated that one
I
more than
hate-
like anything else.
yeah,
Like I had broken ribs and had bleeding in my pleural cavity, and they poked a hole in my side and drained it.
yeah.
Like that didn't bother me at all. But that NG tube that went up my nose, that bug. And the first night I pulled that out. I did, and proceeded. It was probably the worst night for my mother, because she was there in the hospital room with me, and I proceeded to vomit all night long, which is just contorting myself, right? And she's just looking at it going, oh no, he just broke his back. He's doing more damage as a result of vomiting. And so that was a brutal day. But yeah, I'm right there with you. What are these things like? Like, I mean, this thing, you were an athlete. I mean, you were a lacrosse player, you did triathlons, you went to an Ivy League school, you were a professional. Like, looking at these kinds of achievements, how do they fit in the context of what you consider like important or worthy achievements?
Yeah, I laughed at these, and I was like, it's nothing. Like, really? I just lifted my hand to my nose. Like, really?
But wasn't it significant though? I mean, the thing is, like, I mean,
What?
you were reduced to such a level that like being able to do one thing was worthy of like of celebration in some
Yeah.
ways. What?
Yeah. And I'm reading these things, and I was excited about a lot of these things. And I'm really glad she did it, because I'm like still reading some. I haven't read these things like in I don't know how many months, but a while. It was I did celebrate a lot of them. Like even August 15th, my voice was back. I couldn't like talk for a couple of weeks. Um, and again, it comes back to the optimism thing. Like I did like celebrate each thing on one hand, but on the other hand, I wasn't where I wanted to be. So they kind of like drove me to be better and like, okay, yes, celebrate it, but don't celebrate it too much because you got a lot more to achieve, like, yeah, that's great, but keep working because you got a lot more to do, so I did celebrate those small victories, and it's again like going back to like having those small goals and like trying to just like knock off one goal at a time. But I guess I don't get caught up too much in like celebrating them a ton because I still got more work to do.
You still have work to do, but it's also a weird thing. Like in your everyday life, like prior to your accident, you didn't see a monumental change from one day to the next. Whereas with this, in some ways, you see like, okay, you couldn't lift your hand to your nose, and then you could lift your hand to your nose. And it's like, what a fundamental change. I mean, it's kind of a weird way to look at it, but it's kind of interesting just in that it's like, okay, I am actually getting better. Whereas
Yeah.
in our everyday lives, it's like, did you get better today? You're like, I don't know. Today was a lot like yesterday, probably. I mean, maybe we all need your sister to
Yeah.
pester us at the end of the day to be like, what did you do better today? What did you do?
Honestly, yes, everyone needs a sister like this. She's awesome. But I think I guess I've always been like this. I've been like my hardest critic, and my parents will say that, my coaches will say that. Like if I'm coaching someone else, or I really want to get involved with like mentoring other people with spinal cord injuries, newly injured, and I feel like I will be there like sister in the way that my sister was, and make them recognize those small things. But like when you're in it, or when I'm in it, it's so hard to see that. And you do like, I know I do remind myself that like, yes, yesterday was better than today, or my sister reminds me of that. And I think it's just easier to like from an outside looking in.
It totally is. I mean, it's always like our lives are harder because they're our lives
Yeah.
than other people's lives. You're like, oh yeah, you got that. That's awesome. You're all set. Whereas it can be the same issue for us, and we're like, oh, what a major issue, or like whatever it is. What was it like when you were talking about getting discharged, like getting discharged from the hospital or from rehab? how did how did that work? And with your community being such a huge part of your support, were you able to create that community as you left the rehab?
Left inpatient or just recently when I was discharged from outpatient?
Just recently when you left him, because you left outpatient, or well, you were inpatient and then you ended up going to your own apartment, right?
Yeah, so as soon as I left inpatient, I was inpatient at Spalding for 2 months, and then I came and I moved right across the street in Charlestown, and I started living by myself, um, and my that was like that was really tough, but I pushed for that a lot because I guess when you going back to when you said like um, what drove you the most, it really was like getting my independence back. And now I think I've achieved that. So now I can move on and be like, okay, now I'm ready for work. But I really pushed to live by myself and move in like alone, and like I just wanted to like do it alone. Like, I got this. Like, I don't need anyone's help. I don't like asking for that help. I never liked asking for help. Like, even my dad, like when I was injured and I was moving across here, he ran into someone. My I got 3 daughters, and my youngest daughter just got injured, and she's always been like the most independent, and now she doesn't want any help, and she's moving in by herself, and blah 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 blah. And he's like making connections for me in the building, and like, and I ran into this woman like a couple weeks later, and she was like, "Yeah, so I met your dad, and like if you ever need anything, like hit me up." And I'm like, actually, can I use you tonight? Because the person that was gonna help me tonight, like, just bailed, and I kind of need someone. She's like, tonight? I'm like, yeah. And then I just had her over last night, and we're like still friends, and she lives in the building, and it's been great. But that, like, when I first got discharged from inpatient, I moved across the street. I pushed for being alone, but it was the same thing. I had like a schedule of friends come over every single night, so I was never alone. Like, I lived by myself, so I had that independence, but I really wasn't alone because I had friends like coming in and out and helping me, and I couldn't get into bed by myself at that time, so I needed my friends to, help me lift my legs up and help me take my pants off, and like, they were there, and I knew they would be because um, they live right in Boston, and I again have a big community in Boston. But I was just, I want to have, I owe them so much credit, because I wouldn't be where I am today, like, without that support in that community. And people traveled from like all the way from Syracuse and stayed with me for like a week, and like took time off from work just to stay with me. um, and it was huge because also I did need a PCA, but I was still trying to find that
A
PCA.
personal care attendant, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and Spalding will discharge you and like give you the resources, but you got to find that person on your own. And I went through like 4 different people, and they all either showed up for a little time and then just like no showed, or I'd call them and interview them and bring them, even when I was inpatient in rehab, I would bring them there and meet my therapist. We would go over how to help me transfer, set it all up. And then when I moved into my apartment, first day of work, they just didn't show up. And that was just like, so I was like crying every other day because I was like, I just need help and I can't find it. Like,
To start your day, you need
right,
help.
to get out of my bed, like to
Right.
start my day. Yeah. So, but my friends were there, so they helped me, and yeah, and then finally I found someone, and then um, was able to stop calling upon my friends every other day.
What was the reaction from like your doctors, your nurses, your therapists when you said that you were going to go live on your own? Were they supportive? Did they think you were crazy?
They thought I was crazy. Yes, they were supportive because they knew like the drive that I had, and like the drive for independence, and just like my strength and just like determination, that they were supportive, and they knew like I'd be okay. But at the same time, they're like, you have a C6 spinal cord injury, like you're crazy. Like C6 complete spinal cord injury. So like there's nothing below my chest, And yeah, they thought I was crazy. But yeah, that was like,
Which I'd imagine is a big compliment for you.
it was a
They thought you were
compliment.
crazy. You're like, I'm going to keep being crazy too.
Yeah, it was definitely a compliment. Definitely a compliment on one hand, but on the other hand, I kind of hated hearing it because I was like, why are you putting me in this box that like I can't do this? Like, don't assume anything. Don't like, just because I'm a C6 spinal cord injury, it doesn't mean I can't do that. Like, it was a compliment, but I don't know. I was still kind of like, all right, well,
Well, that sounds like part of the motivation too, right? The
Yeah.
idea of like, one, the independence, but two, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yeah.
You told me I can't do this. Like, all right, you can think that, but I'm going to show you that it is wrong. What was it like? So let's go back to this weekend. Like you flew from Boston to San Diego with your friend Gabrielle, but and then you flew back, and not only did you fly back, but you flew back on a rental or on a red eye. What was this whole experience like getting to the airport, because you don't know anything right now. They don't, I mean, your OT isn't sort of taking you through, this is how you get on an airplane.
So luckily, like, just because I'm very extroverted and have met a lot of people from my gym and from therapy, I had a lot of resources before I took the flight to like be like, hey, like, give me some advice. Like, how do you fly? Like, what do I need to do to my wheelchair? So I did have a few friends that I definitely called upon and asked them for pointers. Um, but and Gabrielle there was a godsend. Like, we grew up together. I've known her since like practically kindergarten. We've gone on a lot of trips together. We've traveled a lot together. So we know each other very well. And she just can read what I need. And like, I don't have to tell her, and I don't really have to guide her a lot. She'll just like do it. And so that was very helpful. So it actually went pretty smoothly. I completely, so
Were you
once
nervous?
yes, yeah. I honestly was most nervous about my wheelchair getting damaged because I hear about that a lot on social media. Um, and like the statistic that's out there is that like 29 wheelchairs a day get damaged by airlines. And if that got damaged, like, I don't know what I'd do. Like, those are my legs. Like, that's my independence. So that I was most nervous about that. Um, but getting transferred onto the aisle chair at first, um, transferred onto it, but it's a very, very narrow aisle chair, and it
By
requires,
design, so that it fits in between the aisles so you can get your seat, because your wheelchair is too wide to get
right,
onto the airplane. Okay.
right.
Yep. And it's
Yeah,
slippery. It's narrow and it's slippery.
they're super, yeah. And there's 3 seat belts. So like 2 chest ones that cross, and then one that hold your legs in. I got very long, floppy legs, so definitely like needed, and like no cord to hold myself up. So I needed all those seat belts. So I transferred into the aisle chair. I
So you
didn't
did
have
this
the
independently, transferred into the aisle chair independently?
with a little bit of help, but mostly independently. Yeah.
Okay,
Then Gabrielle would like help move my legs over.
sure.
Uh, yeah. Um, and but then I wasn't strapped in yet, and I didn't have the aisle chair. Also has like side handles bars.
Right, little armrest kind of thing.
Armrest,
Yep.
thank you. And they weren't down yet. They collapse. They go up and down, and so they were folded up still. So I just transferred on, and then I was holding on to my wheelchair next to me that I had just transferred off of for stability. But then one of the airline attendants, moved my wheelchair from behind, and
Right.
I just like completely collapsed
This
off
is
of
your
the
kickstand. Yeah.
yeah. So that was a little bit of a hiccup. I was fine. It was just like when I do fall, usually I kind of just like crumble slowly. And it's like, oh boy, we're going down. Um, and but Gabrielle like immediately like got down and like lifted my butt half in the air, but she couldn't pick me all up. And she recently has a herniated disc. So it's like she's not supposed to lift more than like 15 pounds. And I'm like, someone help her, please. And all the like airline staff members are just kind of, they don't know what to do, like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And I'm like, so please just pick me up and put me back. So, it ended up being fine. I hope her
This is
back's
the start of your trip.
This is the very start. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then they strapped me in, and Gabrielle then had to like completely basically dismantle my wheelchair, take everything that is removable off of my wheelchair, put it into like an empty suitcase, and that's my carry-on. And then she brought that on, and we got on okay. And my wheelchair was fine, no damages there, no damages back. The red eye actually went good. It was almost better to have a red eye. There were like two options. I could either take a red eye or transfer flights, and I didn't want to deal with that and having to transfer into the aisle chair
With
twice.
another aisle chair, or two
Yeah.
more aisle chairs for each time you stop. There's one getting on, one getting off. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, how did the Challenge Athletes thing, how did that come about? How did you end up? Because this is their big fundraising event for the year, their triathlon. I mean, it's an organization that raises money for people with disabilities, for sports equipment, for training, for travel. And how did you connect? I mean, I think it's $134 million that they've raised over the last 19 years. I mean, they're just such an amazing godsend for so many people in our community, right? Whether people in wheelchairs, whether amputees. I mean, there was one kid who had received his first prosthetic leg when he was 9 years old, or 9 months old. Sorry, 9 months old. And then has another one at 15 months old, because you grow, right? So how did you get connected with Challenge Athletes Foundation?
So I tried Challenge Out. I'm so happy to be a part of that family. Especially after this weekend. Like, I knew they were great, but like this weekend was just so much more rewarding than I could have ever imagined. But I got started with it. I tried out the Grit Freedom Chair when I was in rehab at Spalding, and really liked it. It was just a neat design. During like quarantine, I really got into hiking. I really enjoyed that. Just being outside, being in nature. And so the Grit Freedom Chair allows you to kind of go on any terrain, because the thing about your wheelchair is the casters often get stuck in mud or sand. You can't
Right.
go everywhere in your wheelchair. But the Grip Freedom, the whole design of that is that you can go anywhere. And it's a really cool lever system, so it's fun to push too. You kind of like, there's two big tall handlebars on either side, and you just push and pull them, and it propels the kind of like bike tires with that kind of mechanism.
Mhm.
And really like that chair. Posted a picture of me in that chair on my Instagram page, and one of the Grit Freedom Chair sales rep contacted me, and they're like, do you want to try to get one of these and see if you can get a grant and purchase one? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Sign me up, give me the resources. He's like, well, the Challenge Athletes Foundation, they're have a grant out, but it is due in like 2 days. I'm like, okay. So I like spent all weekend. I think he called me like on a Thursday or Friday. It's due Monday. I like spent all weekend on the application, and sorry, and got the grant. And so they loved my application, and I was just put in contact with them. Sorry.
You were far too popular, apparently.
Well, it's some like group text, of course. Hold on, just gonna put that on silent. I don't even know how to turn this off. So it was, apologize for this. It just stops. Okay. So I got in contact with them, and then they then I did the podcast with Bob Bobbitt, right? That's, yeah.
Babbitt, yep.
Babbitt, thank you. Well, that was really fun. And it was the Heroes of Sport podcast. And then just stayed in contact with them, and they invited me out to California for this event. And I didn't really know much about it. I'm still learning all these things and like what all is out there and all the foundations. But it kind of just like happened like that. And that's why I'm really happy that I am putting myself out there, and like sharing my story on Instagram, because it's opening up all these opportunities for me. And like, even if it weren't for that one picture that I posted on Instagram, then I wouldn't even have known about the Challenged Athletes Foundation, maybe, or maybe I would have through some other mechanism. But it kind of just like opened doors from there. And then I got to meet just amazing people while I was there. And
what else did you do while you were there? Well, hold on. Before I ask you that, your Instagram is Vitty's Voyage, right?
Yeah.
VITTYSVOYAGE.
Yeah.
So if people want to follow you, they can follow your journey.
Yeah.
On
Yes. And it was hard for me to, open that up. I started it as a way to just say thank you to the community that had supported me in like my early days of being injured. And I kept it private for a while, and it was just like friends and family and people that I knew that were helping me. And I wanted to share my story with them as like a thank you, because I couldn't really do much. I couldn't write, like I couldn't really use my phone, but I could post a few pictures and just give people updates in that way. And then when I opened it up to the public, that was kind of hard, because it's like you're really exposing yourself, like everything's there. But going back, it was easier because I think of like that diabetes background, like I kind of people already know my medical history, like they already know that I'm injured. And I am a PA, so I have a lot of knowledge, like medically. And so why don't I educate people and tell them like what's actually happening, and share my story that way. And since I've done that, I think it's really important to continue to do that, because not everyone like does feel comfortable like sharing that much. But if someone newly injured just like sees my page and was like, okay, she can do it, like so can I, then like I'm helping someone else. And I don't know, like that gives me a lot of like, I guess,
the C6 can sit up by herself in bed.
Yeah. And like anyone can do that, you can do that, like it's possible. So that's why I've like continued to share and to make myself open. But yeah, going back to Challenge Athletes Foundation, then just meeting like so many people. Like I told you I wanted to meet One Arm Willie, and I was just like,
this is Willie Stewart, who goes by One Arm Willie. He lost his arm back when he was in college. Yeah, he was a character of all characters.
I listened to your podcast a couple times, but then when I met him, I was just like so starstruck. I like didn't even know what to say to him. It was like, oh my God, you're so amazing. Like he like, ran to the hospital with one arm, like, like, so, but yeah, just like meeting people like that, and that, like, just like I said, like, he feels very open and comfortable sharing his story, and listening to him talk is just so inspiring and uplifting. Like, I don't know, the way he can just like go on and talk about like overcoming fear, and um like doing all these triathlons and being a captain, but then also talk about like how he wasn't like that in his growth, and I don't know. So that's why I continue to do it, because he's kind of like my motivation, just like you are. And I don't know, now I have all these mentors, and I want to be a mentor for someone else too.
What did you do? What kind of activities did you do in San Diego? I hear about a budding tennis career.
So yeah, I didn't they had this wheelchair tennis clinic that I didn't originally sign up for, because I have never played tennis in my life. But then I told Gabrielle about it, and she's like, why aren't you doing that? Like, that sounds awesome. Like, are you an idiot? You have to do it. I'm like, okay. And so I frantically emailed the coordinator, and it's like, is it too late? Can I still come to the wheelchair tennis clinic? She's like, yeah, absolutely. So we show up, and I'm like, how am I gonna hold a racket? Like, I don't have any hand function. And this other quad that I met, he's like, yeah, I have hardly any hand function either. Like, I can't hold a racket, but I know I have duct tape in my room. I can go back and get it. And so we ask if, like, we need that. And they're like, yeah, you should go get it. So he ran back to his room and got it. We really just like duct taped our hands to the tennis racket. And he had a little more core function than me. So I was like trying to swing the racket, falling over. The instructor was also partially a quad. He had one normal hand, one quad hand, but not a ton of core function either. So he's like, come here, come with me. And he grabs like a strap
Like a
that
kidney
went,
belt kind of thing, like an elastic strap that will a
yeah,
binder.
that went around my waist and wrapped around the back of my chair to kind of like hold me up and stabilize me, which that worked really well. And yeah, then I played some wheelchair tennis and got in the drills. I was really bad at first, really embarrassing. I should have had better hand-eye coordination, I feel like, considering I was a lacrosse player, but I was a little rusty, I think. But
Well,
I
it's a
got the hang
little
of it.
different too.
It's a little different, yeah. I got the hang of it. I really would love to get in a sports chair, which have the angled wheels, and just they don't have the two casters in front. They can just like turn on a dime. It's pretty hard, trying to turn quickly to get to the ball in a normal day wheelchair. So I was hoping to get into one, but maybe I can at Spalding, and I don't know, see what I can do.
Well, that's the question after all this. Like, you've traveled across country, you played tennis, you were on your own. I mean, you're independent in your apartment, but it's totally different being independent like in a hotel. You swam.
Yeah.
What's next?
What do I have planned next?
Do I have to call your sister?
So the next couple of months, I'm planning on taking my driver's test next month, and then hopefully getting a car pretty soon. Right now, with the microchip shortage, that's kind of up in the air as to when that's all going to happen. But driver's test next month, so I'm really focusing on that.
Have you driven yet?
Yes. So I did like a whole training session, like 6 sessions maybe, and each session was about an hour. That was back in the spring. So I have a day scheduled that I'm just gonna refresh a little bit and drive around. And then the next day I'll take my driver's test. So it
So
came
this
pretty,
is like with the where you put your hand in the like the little holder, basically kind of on the steering wheel,
yeah.
and with the super power assist steering wheel, where it's like you can spin the steering wheel around with just like a
It's like
little.
very, very easy to spin. Yeah, yeah. And they have like 3 prongs that I just place my hand into, and
Right.
then I can go around like that. And then same thing with the brake and the pedal. It's a pretty like touchy system. So you just have to press it a little bit, and that'll brake, and pull the brake, push the pedal. And the same thing is I have like 3 prongs that I just kind of place my hand into. Um, but
And
and
you've been
then
learning to drive in Boston, which is sort of
yeah,
notoriously an interesting place to drive, right?
yeah, these roads are crazy. Yeah. Not the best place to learn how to drive. But I mean, it came pretty quickly. Like I know the rules of the road, and like I was a fairly aware driver. Um, so I just had to learn how to get used to the brake and the pedal and the steering wheel, and keeping my body upright too. I have a chest strap as well that I would wrap around just to give myself a little more stability. So I wouldn't have to focus so much on keeping myself upright. I could focus on the road, you know.
Yeah, you don't want to be
But that also,
exhausted.
yeah, because afterwards, like driving for an hour, I would be like a little sore because it's a like back workout. You have to really keep your body up, and because like now essentially like my back is my core. Like if I squeeze my scaps together, that's what's going to keep me up, or squeeze my shoulders back and scaps together, like that's bringing myself back. So my shoulders would be sore after driving. um but then also learning the like, which I kind of forgot about when I first got in, was how do I turn signal, or how do I turn the windshield wipers on if it's raining, And there's a couple of ways to do it, but how I'm going to do it is there's a button on the side of the door, and I press with my elbow. So like one tap would be right, 2 taps would be left, 3 taps is putting your windshield wipers on, 4 taps windshield wiper fluid. Like I think you can adjust whatever to customize it yourself, but so, and getting used to that too. So, but it was fun. It was good to.
This is back to the original thing, though. I mean, this is your independence, right? It's moving in on your own, but then driving is another form of independence that if you can drive, you
Like
can
what that is
essentially
gonna
go
look like.
anywhere. Right.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, not
And then I
everywhere.
can get myself to a job, because taking transportation is just public transportation is really hard around here. I mean, really hard for anyone. And then add being in a wheelchair on top of it, add being a quadriplegic being on top of that. So um, it's not easy. So if I can do that myself, um, it would just make it much more fluid.
Well, this sounds great. And I think I did threaten to connect you with my father so that you can go out and do some skiing this winter too, right?
Yes. And I just actually heard about, I wanted to ask you if you had any idea what the let me see what it is. It's called the Tetra ski. You heard of that?
The Tetra ski is actually out of the University of Utah, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So Jeff Rosenbluth and who does the rehab center there, they developed it, and it's for, so it would be interesting. I think it's for higher levels than you. So people who would be more likely in a power chair. Because I
yeah.
think what you would probably end up doing is being in a bi-ski.
I see. Yeah.
I would think. So the Tetra ski is a little bit more where it's more, it's more
The
joystick
joystick, yeah, but they even have a
oriented.
putt and sip, or yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So the Tetra ski. So I mean it's a possibility, but it's really, as I understand it, and I'm not an expert, but it's more analogous to like your sip and puff. So
yeah,
people who might be in a sip and puff kind of wheelchair are then in a Tetra ski, but you're out of the wheelchair and you're on the mountain, and you're maintaining some semblance of independence, of being in charge of where you're going on the mountain.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Seems really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
mean, it's all about what's next, which is so cool. And I appreciate you telling us your story and bringing us through, because I think it's easy for all of us to forget sort of the difficult times, the times when it was a big deal that you could lift your hand to your nose, like that's, and that was the thing that your sister wrote down that day. It's easy to forget. It's easy to go, oh yeah, well, it was difficult, but it wasn't that bad.
yeah,
And because this is where you are right now. And so I really appreciate you being willing to kind of talk us through how you were able to get from there to where you are, which in some ways is sort of the beginning too, right? It's like you left there and couldn't do anything, and now it's like, okay, it's still a challenge getting around, and it's still a daily challenge, but you just played tennis. You've just, you're thinking, okay, well, what's next? What the driving, the whatever. And that to me is just really cool. I mean, it shows your resilience. It shows your perseverance and your desire to gain that independence and willingness to work hard to gain that independence. So I really appreciate that, Diane.
yeah. Well, thank you. It's so funny to think back. Like 1 year ago now, I remember crying to my friends who had visited me for Halloween and just being like, I miss my old life. Like, I just want my old life back, And now, like after this weekend, I'm like, it's so strange to now be like so thankful for all that's happened to me this past year. A year ago, I just wanted my old life back, and now I'm like, maybe I don't. Like, if I got my old life back, I wouldn't have met like you and like all these incredible people, and maybe I'm okay in this life, and it's like I'm kind of thankful for it. Like, I still wish I could walk, but it's it's um it's strange. It's a
It's
strange.
it's a strange position that you're in, I think. And I mean that you're in, but I'm in the same sort of position
Yeah,
where
yeah. I think
it'd be great to walk, but there's a part of it where you've had experiences that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
right,
But there's also a part of it that, as uncomfortable as sometimes that is, you're unique too. Sometimes you just want to fit into the crowd and be like, I just want to be like everybody else. But in some ways, you're unique, and as a result, have a unique set of experiences. And just to see you with your friends this weekend, where you were having these experiences, but they were excited to be part of the experiences that you were having,
yeah.
and
That
to,
was
and
really
to be
special
right there
too.
with you.
Yeah, that was really nice to hear too. Like, Gabrielle really had fun, and it was really empowering for her as well. So yeah,
Which is one of the things that you hope for, that she has a good time, that it's not like, oh, Diane's my friend and I need to support her and help her out, and
right,
I'm working so hard to make sure that she has fun, and I'm so exhausted and happy to
right,
be able to go home. Like, she
right,
had a good time. She
right.
enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I'm not a complete burden. you know.
No, and you're opening her world up in a lot of
Right.
ways too, to something different and experiences. And she's like, no, go play tennis. You should go play tennis. You're here.
Exactly. I love that. Like, yeah, it was awesome.
It is.
I want to say thank you to you, Chris, too. Like, you know, I got to know you through my friend Keely, who I also met up with. She lives in San Diego now. So, and her dad introduced us, and we talked early on. So, part of that community that we were talking about, you really helped me. Um, you know, just watching you. And I remember watching your documentary like in rehab. As soon as I met you, I like watched your documentary, Climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, I still couldn't even like, I don't know if I could even sit up at that time. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you will do exactly that same thing for other people, that early on it's hard to be able to even dream. I mean,
Hmm.
you dream of like, okay, well, I want my old life back. I want to be able to walk, but you don't necessarily dream in that same realm of like, for me, I remember watching like this guy, Jim Martinson, ski. And I was like, wow, like you can do this. Like, this is really like skiing. Like it's beautiful and it's powerful and it's fast and it's cool. And it's hard we're lucky that so many people have paved the way for us to be able to let us go, yeah, okay, there's a possibility, there's stuff out there, I can do it, it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that I could be there for you in that respect, because so many people have been there for me, and I'm sure you'll be there for so many other people. So it's kind of that cycle of life, or cycle of
Paying it forward and
position. Yeah, so of existence, I guess. So yeah, well, Dan, it's wonderful for me now to be able to call you a friend, and I look forward to seeing you on adventures and seeing what your next adventures are going to be. So thank you for joining us.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun.
This has been great. You didn't need to be too nervous, right?
No, you make it easy. You're very easy to talk to.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to all of you for tuning in. This has been a really fun episode. If you didn't get a chance to see the whole thing, it will be on the One Revolution page on Facebook. So you can go back to it. You can watch the whole thing. We will edit later on and make it into a podcast that'll be on YouTube and Apple and Spotify and all the other suspects. So as we usually say, the greatest gift that you can give us is to tell your friends. Tell your friends to tune in when it's a podcast, to like the podcast, to follow us, to subscribe. Those are the things that help us bring more cool people like Dianne to the show. So Dianne, thank you again. And thanks to all of you.